I actually started my working life at the airport making sandwiches for people who fly in aeroplanes. I moved to a big FTSE 100 company actually in a business coaching capacity, and I had 14 entrepreneurs under my span of control, and my job was to help them grow their business. I found it really hard to sell something to somebody that didn't need it or want it. So I then transitioned into HR. That's really where I started to really think about values and how strengths came into play.
So how do we hire people who use this equation of hiring people with the right set of values that match our values?
When you're recruiting someone, is to have the values conversation. People won't buy coaching unless they trust the process or trust the people. And part of trust is credibility. Mm-hmm. What often we do as human beings, we're looking for somebody that's better than us at something to decide that they're the right person to coach us, when actually that's so wrong.
What is the right then?
Let's take football or soccer as an example. The best coaches in the world are generally not the best football players in the world. Rare. Mm-hmm. Right? Why is that? Figuring out a goal, so goal setting, and then coming back from the goal and saying, why is this goal important to you?
We are chasing the wrong thing. Welcome to the Forward Thinking People podcast, where we deep dive into the journeys of extraordinary individuals who are making a significant impact on the world. I'm your host, Namita, Ramani, and today we have a truly inspiring guest with us, Nick Glover. Nick is a social impact director at Waste to Wonder Worldwide, advancing their ethical office clearing and reuse program in the Middle East. He also holds a remarkable distinction of being the first type 1 diabetic and a cancer survivor globally to complete a triple Everest cycling challenge, covering 985 kilometers and 27,000 meters of elevation, a feat achieved by fewer than 60 people worldwide. Additionally, he is the second type 1 diabetic to complete an Ultraman triathlon and has been on the podium in multiple triathlon and duathlon races. Beyond cycling, Nick is a skydiver, a kite surfer, and a motorcycle enthusiast, continuously pushing the boundaries of human endurance. Nick's professional journey is equally impressive. With extensive experience in learning and development, he has held leadership roles across various organizations, including AXA Insurance, AES International, Network International, and more. His work focuses on transforming organizations by cultivating growth, excellence, and sustainability. At Waste to Wonder Worldwide, Nick is at the forefront of redistributing no longer needed equipment from corporate environments to good causes around the world, proving that the business development and environmental stewardship can go hand in hand. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I want to also add that Nick is also my cycling coach. So Nick is big time into coaching.
Yep, I love it.
You have also done business coaching.
Yes, yep. So I qualified as there's a body called ICF, the International Coach Federation, and in 2019 I qualified as a certified organizational business coach through them.
Okay.
And started coaching from there.
And that's why I think it's going to be a fantastic conversation, because our podcast is directed towards business owners, entrepreneurs, and aspiring business owners. So hopefully everybody's going to learn a lot on how to be and be better at, or more sustainable, and in general, a better business person, a human being. Let's see where it goes.
I think it's there's so many crossovers and overlaps of everything that we do.
Yeah.
We just kind of pigeonhole work, we pigeonhole sport, we pigeonhole sustainability, when actually they're all very much the same thing.
True.
We just need to be better human beings.
I think that's where we need to start, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Let's start with your journey. Would you like to share your professional journey with us first?
Yeah, sure. So I'm 46 years old, 47 in November. So I've been working for 30 years. So I left school quite young, at 16. I was never very good at school. I liked the last year at school, but it was a bit late then when I realised that actually I could do quite well. It was too late for me, so I had to go into the workforce. And I actually started my working life at the airport making sandwiches for people who fly in aeroplanes.
Wow.
So And you can see a bit of my work ethic was, we were working 90 hours a week. And my salaries 30 years ago was, £1 an hour, about 5 dirhams an hour. So I was having to do a lot of hours, 6 days a week, 90 hours a week. So, 15 hours a day. And it was a really cool experience because I got to meet lots of good people, but also keep things down to earth and understand how people work. I moved from there into a factory. So I worked for a company that makes fighter jet ejector seats. They were called Ronaldsway Aircraft Company in the Isle of Man. They also made turbine blades for Rolls-Royce engines. So when you fly in an aeroplane,
you're still using Rolls-Royce engines.
The engines were made by us, or parts of the engines were made by us. A really incredible idea. And then I had a daughter in '99, and the world of making ejector seats for fighter jets was running slow, and I needed a sustainable job, and finance in the Isle of Man, which is where I'm from, was taking off. It was, there was finance companies appearing everywhere. Banks were bringing their headquarters there. Life insurance companies were bringing their headquarters there. And I joined a company called Royal & Son Alliance in their claims team. A friend, my wife at the time, her boss needed people in her team, came to me. We had a conversation. I said, well, I've got no experience. I don't know what I'm doing. And she goes, don't worry, we'll teach you. As long as you want to do it, we'll teach you how to do it. So I worked for probably 4 years in that company in operations, all the way through claims, new business, client excellence, client service.
So you learned everything on the job.
So the operational side of the business I learned in the beginning. Yeah, I learned from the very beginning. I started doing qualifications in finance. And, to cut a long story short, I spent the next 25 years in some capacity in finance, mostly in financial planning, investment, savings, insurance world. And actually most of the time moving through sales environments as well. So from the ops role, I moved into sales support. From sales support, I moved into telesales. So a few years with each of these roles, learning how to actually do the role before moving on. And at telesales, I was kind of like, it doesn't feel right. I don't feel like I'm actually where I should be. And that was my first introduction to learning and development. So we're probably talking 2003 or 2004. Well, no, 2005. And I moved into L&D and I absolutely loved it. It was phenomenal. It was my best work experience to that point. Building, training opportunities for people, learning opportunities for people. We called them training opportunities in those days. And they probably weren't very good at the time either.
This is for the contact center, people who are telesales?
For the whole organisation. Okay. So locally in the Isle of Man. And then we had 2007, 2008 and the financial crisis, and all back office, all HR.
Everything was shut.
Everything was minimised. Yeah. And I was one of those last in, first out. But I didn't leave the company because I'd been with the company already, however long it was, 8 years at the time. They moved me back into sales. So, and within 3 months of being back in sales, they then asked me if I wanted to move to Dubai on a 6-month secondment. So in 2009.
That's how you came to Dubai.
May, they asked me, June I arrived. And then from there, it's kind of been sales for the next, until 2016, I think it was. Some form of sales, whether it was field sales or then kind of head of business, head of sales for AXA.
But you didn't like sales so much,
I didn't, no, but I love the idea of connecting with people and understanding how I could help people. And I think that was the core of my sales ability. Yeah. I was never at the top of the tree in the sales world, but I was always somewhere or thereabouts. I could always make it to the end of the year in the sales context, but I was never the best. And I put that down to the fact that I found it really hard to sell something to somebody that didn't need it or want it. And I preferred to work in a sales capacity as let's build a relationship together. Let me add value where I can. That might not be selling you a product, might just be helping you from some other context.
You were a good salesperson.
Well, yeah, definitely could have been better because we didn't know what we didn't know in those days either. We were just kind of, I was kind of making it up as I went along. And I think that's probably until I'd say 2018, I was just making it up as I went along and hoping for the best. And then I moved to a big FTSE 100 company, actually in a business coaching capacity. It wasn't called business coaching, but that was the main profile of the job. And I had 14 entrepreneurs under my span of control. And my job was to help them grow their business and help them become more productive, happier in their work, build stronger brands, build people, build processes, build services, to enable them to actually expand their business and grow. And it's then I ran a company. I poached from there and ran a company, a small company in Singapore, before finally coming back to Dubai in 2020. And really, at that point, I was kind of saying, okay, I'm not a revenue generator. I think that's probably I'm never going to chase a balance sheet. That's pretty much where my limits are. I'll do everything that needs to happen
to make it survive.
To make it survive, but I'm not necessarily going to be pushing the roof off for profit. It's just not in my makeup. So in 2019, I said to my wife, I was like, I want to go into the human resources world because I think that's where I'm probably going to make the biggest impact. In terms of being shoulder to shoulder with people that do want to become the top salespeople and actually helping them become the top salespeople. I know what to do. I just don't have it in my nature
to do it.
So, because there's a whole host of skills things that you need, attributes that you need to be able to be a good salesperson, and not everybody is. People can be good people, but they don't necessarily make great salespeople. And great salespeople are the people who think about, what the customer needs or directing the customer to get in what they need. But ultimately, they still have to keep pushing, and it's one customer, then it's the next customer, it's the next customer. For me, that's just a bit superficial. So I then transitioned into HR, came to a company called AES International here. I did some recruitment work for them, and that's really where I started to really think about values and how strengths came into play, and how people saw themselves in the roles that they were applying for. And I've got a really interesting, I find it quite interesting, story about one girl I recruited.
A little bit about our sponsors. This podcast is brought to you by Above Digital. We are a sales-focused performance marketing agency specializing in lead generation and e-commerce revenue growth. If you're looking to grow and scale your business, reach out to us on www.abovedigital.com. That's ABOVEDIGITAL.com.
In finance and how we came to associate why she liked finance.
Okay.
So then there was AES, and then I moved to a technology company to work within their culture transformation, and that failed. If I'm honest, that was a learning curve from how culture really works, and what needs to happen to change culture. And that then led me to. Okay, so I'm not going to be I'm not a corporate man, clearly. So I'm not necessarily going to I'm not necessarily going to be the standout person in a corporation. So what do I do next? How do I keep making a difference, but be me, be authentic? And I got an introduction to a guy called Michael Amos, who's the managing director for Waste to Wonder Worldwide, and they were looking to expand here. They didn't have anybody here, and they were looking for somebody on the ground. And we talked, and the next thing, I'm changing my career direction again. But within the same, and this is where, that interesting story, it's all about the job, really, the company, the product is really irrelevant if you're able to connect the things that you're passionate about to that thing.
Yeah, it's very important to be sold to what you're selling. Believe in it.
Yes, absolutely. Because when I joined, I've no idea. I've never done a logistics job before. I've never organised, 5 different logistic companies, contractors, companies all arranging things at different times.
But you believe in sustainability and reusing of the furniture and stuff.
I believe in opportunity for people at the other end. It's not. I never came for the sustainability piece or the sustainability piece from a carbon perspective and things like that. I came for the social impact piece, and because I think the world is broken, really, and whether you're looking at that from a political perspective, a corporate perspective, a wealth distribution perspective, all of those points, I think the world is broken. I think we have lost connection with one another as human beings. And I think somehow I see my role in the world as how do we bring connection back to the forefront so people can achieve the things they want to achieve. And the great thing for me that Waste to Wonder do is they provide tools and resources for young people that wouldn't have the opportunity to sit at a desk. Simple things, corporations all over the UAE throwing desks like
Loads
this
of
away.
Yeah.
It's like amazing. It's like,
it's very
what?
sad. Yeah.
All because the brand color changed or something changed and you come down the funnel and people stop caring as you come down the funnel because they're just focused on a goal.
Doing their job.
I think, but that's one of the problems. People are just doing their job and they're not necessarily thinking from any wider. They're just trying to survive. And I see survival a lot in the UAE.
Because
around the world,
world is getting expensive.
The world's becoming more and more competitive.
Yeah.
Expensive, smaller.
Yeah. Houses are getting smaller. As more and more people are being born.
Yeah. Well, but what's true and what's not true anymore as well. It's there's so much. Who do you believe? Do you believe the politicians? Do you believe the money? Do you believe the corporations? It's kind of like we've lost the belief in people. I think. I think there's a generalized idea that humanity is so far apart now than it's ever been before. And I had a conversation with somebody, a bit off tangent here, but in the theme. I was in a conversation with a big group. There was an audience there, and there was a young guy talking about AI and skills that kids would need moving into the future. And one of the things he said was critical thinking. The generation now has lost the ability to critically think. And I disagree with him because we've been losing the idea of critical thinking for the last 100 years because it doesn't exist. We're not allowed to think anymore.
There's no time to think.
Well, but that as well. Yeah. So how can we have an argument and we might have an opinion, but we just go, okay, I've got to do it this way because the person who's told me to do it that way won't let me have my critical argument. And it's because everybody's trying to get up the ladder because they see success as being the most powerful instead of actually being, you know what, I made a difference to someone's life today. And whether you're carrying an insurance product, a bicycle, a shoe, a dress, you're making a difference to somebody. And I think that's the thing that
you're giving a service. You're helping that person solve a problem, solve a need.
Yeah.
Ethical, authenticity.
Yes. And I think it's across the board. So Waste to Wonder are very passionate about that, helping people who don't have, or underserved or underprivileged is probably the best way we describe it. We provide opportunities for them to get skills to enable them to escape poverty. And, the Western world has been donating money to Africa for the best part of 50 years, as long as I've been alive. And nothing's changed.
I don't know where that money is going.
Well, nobody does. into wallets that
Looks like.
into is a charity really giving, or is it just a poster? And talk about this a lot is just because it says it on the wall doesn't mean that that's how the business runs itself. And I think that's often where businesses get tripped up, is their people buy into an idea and they sign that psychological contract, but then the psychological contract gets broken over and over and over again, and then people just stop working, or they do just enough to not lose their job, because survival is more important than at this point than fighting the system to get that psychological contract in where it should have been, or where the promise was originally. And I think that's one of the lessons that I think organizations could learn in this time, because human beings are fighting now for the right to have autonomy, the right to have fulfillment and meaningfulness in their work, the right to decide how they do their work. And I think there is a big head beater at the moment between businesses and people. And then you've got AI or technology, whatever we want to call it, fighting as well in the middle, kind of trying to split everything up. And what's next?
There's so many different questions that are coming in my mind as you're still introducing yourself. I'm like, should I take him to another direction?
Sorry.
But I was still waiting for you to share. And then and you also have Naked Endurance, which is one of your own training venture for sports and athletes.
Yes, I actually I started. Well, I didn't start Naked Endurance. My wife did, because she trained she had cancer in 2012. She had breast cancer, and after made it through the other side, she began to start really thinking about what she was putting in her mouth and into her gut, and really thinking how nutrition affects chronic and
diseases and
illnesses, and why people are or chronically unwell and dying early. So she did a few nutrition coaching qualifications, and began helping clients change their diet and change the way they lived, or change the food that they put in their mouth, so their lives could change, and they could have more energy and be happier. And we decided for that company it was going to be called Naked Endurance, or Naked Nutrition at the time, because it was all about how do we strip back what somebody's doing today so they can rebuild from the ground up, and rebuild. So often as well, and what we find with this is when somebody's got an issue, they actually don't know what they're putting in their mouth or what sport they're doing or whatever it is, because they're either lying to themselves, or they're blind to it, or emotionally they're not ready to acknowledge it. So we called it Naked Nutrition, and then that was a little while. She also hates the business development world, and she hates the idea of having to go out and sell herself, and so getting clients is quite difficult for her. So it just grew organically, and then when we moved back here in 2020. A couple of guys that I was riding with said they wanted a cycling coach, and I'd been doing a lot of coaching for myself and for my small peer groups, and I was like, well, okay, let's do it. And there was two guys. One of them I still coach today, and Naked Endurance was born, or Naked Endurance Coaching was born. And I have a business partner called Alan, who's also he lives in Poland. He was my credibility as well. So he's a super fast triathlete, super strong cyclist, and we talked a lot about this connecting to human beings and this whole trust idea. People won't buy coaching unless they trust the process or trust the people, and part of trust is credibility. So if you're not, and what often we do as human beings, we're looking for somebody that's better than us at something, to decide that they're the right person to coach us, when actually that's so wrong.
What is the right then?
To look at somebody who can make a connection with me, and actually then look at me to say, they need to have credentials. So I need to know about physiology. I need to understand cycling as a sport. I need to understand the dynamics. I need to understand strength, but I don't necessarily need to be good at it. I don't need to be the best cyclist, because once I understand these things over here, then it's about helping you figure it out and actually draw the connection to these things through the training process.
But if you already know that, wouldn't you do it for yourself?
How do you mean?
If you already know what makes you the best, what all you need to do to be the best, shouldn't it first work for yourself?
Well,
before it can work for someone else?
But you might not have sometimes it's down to genetics. So if you look at, let's take football or soccer as an example, the best coaches in the world are generally not the best football players in the world. Rare. Mm-hmm. Right? Why is that? Often when you're so good at something, you have no idea why you're good at something. It's a natural talent. Or you've refined the skill so well that then you have something called expert bias. So when I have to describe it to you, what I do that's so good, I can't because I don't understand how to describe it to you, to actually so you can understand it and then you can repeat. And also for you, is it actually about repeating? Are you copying my process or what I do? That's generally not the right way because we're unique. We're the same but unique in many things. So it's all about how do we use the coaching process to help somebody become the best version of themselves? Okay, and that's often a lot of questions like, what are you thinking right now?
Yeah.
What was going through your mind through that process? Did you challenge yourself? Where were the demons? Lots of little things that come to the surface that often get in the way. And then if we think about performance, there's performance is potential minus interference. Interference is often in the head.
It's always in the head.
Always. Well, 90% of the time it is, but we don't like to acknowledge it because often we want the world to see us as perfect or not the perfect human being, but often we don't like to show our vulnerabilities, right? So by showing our vulnerabilities means somebody might abuse that or judge me, but the fact is people are judging you anyway.
True.
So
how will they abuse if they know my imperfection?
Well, so they might take that imperfection and use it against you, right? So there's those dangers that our brains think about that don't necessarily explicitly tell you that that's what's happening. But it's happening inside. It's happening through the emotional response, through the conversations you're having with yourself. And the brain is really good at actually telling you lies as well. So because it makes you feel good. So it wants you to get back to the status quo or the equilibrium. Whatever way is the quickest way there, it will take you there. Because as human beings, we don't like pain. We don't like we don't want pain because that puts us in danger as well.
Yeah.
So it's all about, for me, coaching is about that balance of how do you help the person become the best version of themselves. And I don't think you can look at the best athlete or the best business person in the world and just replicate. You've got Simon Sinek here. People have tried, or Gary, what's his name? Yes. It's the two people are trying to be them. It's like, well, no, don't be them. Take the messages and be the best version you can. Because you can't, if you try to copy, that's then inauthentic. And people smell
inauthenticity.
You feel it, exactly. There's that thing called the psychological contract. Yeah. And that psychological contract is so important in business.
Yeah.
In anything we do. Because when I say I'm going to do something, you want to know that I'm going to do it. And you're looking then for senses as whether I'm going to do it or not.
Yeah.
And when you smell that I'm not going to do it, then you'll find reasons why I won't do it, whether they exist or not.
It's amazing how, when I go for a business meeting, for example, I know whether I'm going to do business with that person or not. I just know it.
Yeah.
That he's going to hire us or not, or something.
Yeah.
It didn't click.
Yeah.
It's not going to be my client. I don't know what it is though. What is that feeling called? The gut or the business person's gut. So they say you have a special gut. Entrepreneur.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's an interesting part actually. We've talked about this before in coaching and the chimp paradox. I think that people talk about gut instinct or intuition, and trust your gut. Or, the science people in the world today are saying, well, don't trust your gut because actually there's no scientific proof behind your gut, or you can't explain it. Actually, it's a balance of them all, because if you think, well, if you put good information into your brain, into your mind, and you can critically process that, and it's coming in often enough, it will turn into a repetitive or a memory or knowledge that's embedded into your brain. Then you've got an emotional brain and you've got a logical brain. When those two or those three things really connect, when they agree, let's say there are three powers of your brain that are always fighting with each other to decide who wins and who gets to make the decision. Mm-hmm. Let's say intuition is the point where they all agree and they say, yes, this is the right thing to do. And we might call that gut instinct, we might call it intuition, whatever. I don't know what we call it, but that's my thesis on this. And I've really got no science behind it, but after reading all the books and listening to people like Simon and Gary and other business leaders like that, I kind of tend to think that when we can rationalize something, we feel emotionally good about it, and it matches with the memories that we've experienced in the past,
and it feels right.
We've learned from. Mm-hmm. It feels
right.
But I think that's it. It feels right because the emotional mind, the logical mind, and the memory mind are all connecting to one another and saying, "Yep, this is the right thing to do. Let's move forwards." Yeah. But often that's not the case 9 times out of 10. Because they're fighting each other, which is why you don't...
In other places when it doesn't feel right.
I think...
That's when the confusion happens and you don't know what to do.
Yeah, but...
Indecision comes there.
100%, yeah. And indecision is being indecisive is the one thing that is going to fail a business.
Yeah.
Because whatever decision you make, it's the right decision at the time.
Yeah.
And then you learn from that decision. And that's the thing. People make a decision and then they don't learn from it. They keep going, and it's the wrong. It becomes the wrong thing to do, and then they're so deep into the that they can't get out. Yeah. And that's where I think things like critical thinking really are really invaluable, and small and large businesses that to be able to actually evaluate the decision they made and not be too protective of that decision is actually going to help them and steer them well in the future.
The 14 entrepreneurs that you coached, you want to share some of your experience with that? How is that whole process, and what did they gain, and how did it benefit them in their business growth?
Well, I mean, from a statistics perspective, we increased productivity by 175% across the 14 people. We increased what we'll call assets under advice, or AUA, by 75%. Pretty much all of the partners that I worked with, made it through their competency status every year. So there's a number of metrics that we used. But from the coaching perspective, the way I coach is always, what's your thinking process now? What's important to you? And often when it becomes, I need to let's say I need to sign up this client, and in the financial planning world, if you see a financial advisor, the first thing they're trying to do is sign you up. Mm-hmm. And actually that's the wrong place to start, because like you said, you can sniff it out a mile away. And when somebody's trying to sign you up, they don't have your best interest at heart. Or they say they do. So it was always about figuring out a goal, so goal setting, and then coming back from the goal and saying, why is this goal important to you? So generally it would start with, I need to raise £2 million this year of assets under advice. And then we'd be like, well, why is that important to you? Because I want to build a partnership. Okay, what does a partnership look like? So then we're starting to build and really draw out this vision and this mission of their business. And then what we'd end up with a set of goals at the end that was nothing to do with £2 million of assets under advice. It would be, I want to have strong connections to my clients. I want my clients to refer me to other clients. I want them to score me well on a client feedback form. It'd be things like that. It had nothing to do with the money. The money was the distractor. But that's what businesses focus on.
We are chasing the wrong thing.
I think
a lot
so.
of times.
I think so. Yeah.
Which is revenue goals. But then you need revenue goals to
Of
meet your
of course you do.
bottom line, top line,
Yeah.
and to make a sustainable business. Otherwise, and that's one of the reasons why businesses fail.
Yeah.
They say about, I think 75% of the business or more,
Yeah.
the statistics says that they fail between 1 to 3 years of the business cycle. And then if they survive
Yeah.
or cross to 5 years, then in 7 years, if they cross the 7th year mark,
Yeah.
then there's something bigger coming.
Yeah, well, they've got, what's the word? Begins with C. Then they've got, what's the word? God, my mind's gone blank. They've got momentum. It's not big.
Yes.
It doesn't begin with C. It begins with M. So once you've got momentum, then
then just
things start to move
fall into place and move
fall
forward,
into place. Yeah, but I think when people go after money, and I think this is the thing is, when you go after money, you do things that you wouldn't necessarily do if you had a more human aligned business. If you've got a good product, you don't need to chase the money because people will buy it.
Yeah.
Right, and if the reason they're not buying it, it's probably got nothing to do with the fact that it's not a good product. It's probably got something to do with the way you're advertising it to them or the way you're trying to sell it to them. They can't see the goodness in the product because all they see is they are your cash cow.
Yeah.
And I think, and this is where people in the human resources world, or people in the kind of not Simon Sinek, because he's not that way, but in that world of people matter most, is they say money doesn't matter, but money does matter, right? So let's not deny the fact that if the balance sheet doesn't hit its numbers to make its business work, the business fails. Simple, right? But when you focus is on the money, you forget everything else.
Yeah.
All right, and so I think the thing is, remember the money needs to take care of itself, and the money will take care of itself if you do all the other things. And the things that
money is the byproduct of great
money's
service
money's
and
the
great
outcome.
product.
Yeah, money's the outcome. Money's this Apple. Why are Apple the biggest phone company in the world now?
Yeah.
It's because they changed and it's changing now because people see themselves as, oh, I'm just another Apple cash cow, and I'm not actually, the value's not the same as it was at the beginning. And I think Apple see people as cash cows, and I think you can sense it, you can see it coming through, and I wonder where the next phase is for someone like Apple. But anyway, too big. Where are we going? So, yeah, I think the money will take care of itself. I think if you've got a strong set of values as an organization, and you hire people based on those values with a desire to do good work, and they can make a connection between their strengths and the work that you're asking them to do, the money will take care of itself. It will.
So how do we hire people? How do we use this equation of hiring people with the right set of values that match our values?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is to have, when you're recruiting someone, is to have the values conversation, and actually ask what is it you actually value, and then start asking subsequent questions on the back of that say, well, why do you value authenticity? And the interesting thing about asking people about values is they rarely say, I want to be rich, or I value money. They rarely say it. And do you know why that is? Because people don't want to be associated with what is perceived on the bigger things as a potentially negative value, or what might be perceived as a negative value. Some people might value working 20 hours a day. But if I tried to recruit you and say, my values are, we work from dusk till dawn, maybe even longer. I want you to give up your family for the time that you work here. How many people am I going to hire? Okay.
No one.
well, yes and no. So because I think there's a place in the world, and this is where I think companies are making a mistake, and small and large. And I've got experiences through this, through big and small companies where they say they value this. So, for example, one is that's sunshine failures, right? And then what happens is people get fired when they make a mistake, right? So there's no balance. If they actually said we value getting it right first time, then the people that come in would be people who value that same thing. Yeah. They don't necessarily value something else. And I think that's the point with the recruitment phase. It's aligning people who value the same things that you do, especially as a small business. If you need people as a small business to be working 20 hours a day, you need to make sure that those people value
that hard work,
loving hard work,
yeah. And
they're resilient, and they're committed to the same vision that you have. Yeah. The second you get someone who's a hanger-oner, your business is going to get dragged into the dustbin. So values is important, and then I think once you've got connected values, then it's about just simply finding out what are people good at. What is it that makes them unique? And it's quite often people don't know how to answer the question. And then what happens is the recruitment process falls over because the person recruiting doesn't know how to ask the question to get the information out of you. You don't know how to tell the person the information that you've got inside you. So we then just decide whether I like you or not. And then you end up with a company full of people you either like or dislike, or somebody likes down the chain, and things fall over. And to kind of give you an example of this, I was recruiting for an accountant one time, and there was a lady I was speaking to, and I said, "Tell me, why did you choose accountancy as a profession?"
Career.
And she's like, "I don't know."
The answer should be I love numbers. I like telling things. That should be the actual.
Well,
thing.
but the great thing about the conversation, and one of the things this is why I value authenticity, because I think when you're authentic with somebody, they'll be authentic back. And I think that was the great thing about when I was recruiting, is people would tell me the truth. Mm-hmm. Because we'd always spend time at the beginning talking about who are you as a human being, and then how do I help you, whether that's a job at my company or a job somewhere else or a connection somewhere else. If I see your strengths can connect to somebody that I know. So I said to her, "Okay, so tell me something you love doing at home." And she goes, "Well, I love to cook." I was like, "Oh, tell me more. Tell me about the cooking experience." And she's like, "Oh, I like to. My husband loves to eat. I love to give him great food. I love selecting the food from the supermarkets. I love putting the food together. I love mixing them together. I like bringing them to the boil," or whatever the words were she used at the time.
She should be a chef.
Well, and so here we'll get to the complexity of this in a second, because I think, we pigeonhole something and we say chef.
Oh, okay.
Cooking. Actually, so where we got to with her, I was like, so how does cooking for your husband relate to being an accountant? And she's like, "Oh, well, I get given, I've got a management team who love to see great numbers, so great food. And I get this whole raft of people, the apples and the bananas and the watermelons departments, giving me a whole heap of numbers. And then I have to mix them all together and make them all work, so the people at the end here get a nice meal at the end of the quarter or the end of the year." And she's a job. I actually see that process of taking raw information from over here and turning it into something that's beautiful for presenting it over here. And this is the thing. Because I have the talent to be a chef doesn't mean I have to be a chef. Because I have the talent to be an accountant doesn't mean I have to be an accountant. And I think that's where we get mixed up. We start thinking about job profiles instead of raw talent. And I think so you're thinking about values, then you're thinking about talent. Once you've got all strengths, and once you've got a kind of an understanding of strengths and understanding of those people, that person's values, then it's an easy decision to make to say, would they fit or not? Because what my business looks like today, and you know this, you run a small business, what my business looks like today versus what my business is going to be in 5 years' time could be completely different, right? So I need somebody that's going to be able to help me grow today. And we'll answer the question for 5 years in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
And then it's about having the conversation that says, well, we don't do jobs for life anymore. You know, when my parents went to work, it was a job for life. It was a government job or whatever. You know, they don't exist anymore. So what have they been replaced with? And well, they haven't been replaced with anything apart from insecurity. And I think that's where organizations can also get better, is define your values well, bring people in who have got the strengths or talents to connect with the role that they want to do with the same values, but also have the have the conversation that says, we can't give you a job for life because we don't know whether our business will be here in 20 years' time or not. But what we can do as a trade for your dedication to the job, to the role, to the whatever it is that you're doing for us, we will provide you with the skills and talents and upskilling to enable you to stay employed for your employable life. Because we need security. We're human beings. We need, and money is the, you know, whether money matters or not is another, you know, we'll have this debate forever, I think. But money is the determinant for, can I put food on the table? So I do need a basic level of money to survive. And I think as long as people, my view is, as long as people have the ability to survive, they also have then the opportunity to thrive. And I think if you run a business in that basis of, it's not a job for life, but we'll help you build the skills to remain employable for the rest of your life. We'll help you move as the world changes around us in this thing that we're doing, whether it's marketing, whether it's being a chef, whether it's being a IT technician or whatever it might be. It's about upskilling. And if you think then about what's important to people, I think we can all agree that growing is important. None of us want to stay the same ever, right? So growth is important. So it's an obligation of companies to provide meaningful learning opportunities for people. And that's another thing. So somebody who's come from learning and development and guilty of this as well is going, organization wants people to have better communication skills, and then us just putting a program together and it becoming meaningless because people on the course, one, don't know why they're there, two, have no connection to what the course material is. It doesn't make sense to the job that they're doing. So I think it's all about, well, how do we help people upskill in a meaningful way to them? So I think they're the three things that I would focus on. I think the question was something, I can't remember now, but values, strengths, upskilling.
Yeah, that's when you're hiring, when
when
you're doing your hiring.
Yeah.
Did you, I actually asked you about the 14 people, business owners that you worked with, and did you notice any particular trend of challenges that generally people on the top level face? Like there's a particular challenge which was common across the board. I'm sure that is what maybe all of us would resonate as well with that.
I mean, the easy answer to that is that they become slaves to the balance sheet, and then they forget people. That's, I'd say, one of the biggest challenges that people face is actually not being focused on money
and being more authentic in serving the people that their products and service, or solving the problem that their product or service is solving for the people they want to serve.
Absolutely, yeah. And then, because what happens is, as the balance sheet doesn't hit its revenue target, or whichever way we describe it, then we chase harder and harder and harder and harder, and actually the numbers keep going down and down and down and down. So time is another challenge for people that are running small businesses.
Wearing multiple hats, too many things to do.
Absolutely, yeah. Because that's
Overwhelm.
Well, yeah. So, but that's because I think that's also because small businesses are, well, the nature of a small business is you need to wear multiple hats, because you're doing operations, you're doing revenue generation, you're doing product growth, you're doing what's next, what's 5 years down the line. You're thinking about, you're being in the business and you're looking at the businesses. You've got to wear those two distinct hats. As you get out of that initial cycle and you've got a couple of people to help you, I think then what often happens to small business owners is they forget that they've got people there helping them, and they continue to operate in this way that they're in the business and not looking at or on the business.
Yeah.
And you can be in the business, but not as hands-on as you were, because now you've got people to do some of those things that were drowning you initially. So it's actually breaking that cycle is also quite hard, is a challenge for business owners, because it's your passion.
Yeah.
It's the thing that you've blood, sweat and tears have got the business to where it is today, and all of a sudden you've got to hand it off to somebody.
Yeah.
And generally the hiring
trust is the biggest, whether the person will be able to do the same job as perfectly, error-free,
perfection
possible or not.
Is perfection
so trust
possible?
is another big factor when companies growing, when entrepreneurs, like I remember when we were we are about 20 years old as a business, and I started hiring people within the first year, that because I knew I cannot execute. I need someone to execute. I can go and bring sales, I can get business, but I want someone to execute. So I started having offshore teams. This I'm talking about in the year 2004 when I started. And then there was a time when I couldn't manage offshore teams, and I started hiring in-house teams, and the company started growing. One of my biggest challenge was managing people and trusting that the job would be done well. Then to make sure that the job is done well, we put in SOPs, which will still have errors. This constant, and you know what I've come to realize? There will be errors. Wherever there's a human involved, there would be errors. You cannot have an error-free. So I started going to technology. I started investing in things, in systems that are automated, so there's no human required to like the numbers. Like if for example, we are a digital agency and we work with numbers. If you have not taken the numbers correct from the panel, I cannot take the right decision. So I started investing in tech, which will give us numbers straight from the panel to our Excel sheets. And trust. These are all the challenges that I'm sure all business owners face as they are growing their business.
But from your investment perspective, if you're too busy in the company, so working in the company, you don't have the space and capacity to actually make those decisions. Or if you do make those decisions, half of them will be wrong, because you're actually not thinking about the broader and bigger picture of the organization. So it's how, as a business owner, do you create the space for yourself to actually look at the business as well as being in the business. And trust is a foundation of humanity. The people that are around us are generally people we trust, right? So
and that's the hardest thing to do, to trust.
But there's a set of things so we can think about trust as an equation. There's actually this is not mine, this is I can't remember who it was now, but it was in the finance world, created this thing called the trust equation. And it's credibility. So do I know what I'm talking about? Reliability. When I say I'm going to do it, do I do it on time? Then there's intimacy. So am I showing you that I care about this thing? And then, so plus. Let's say each point has 10 points. If you wanted to be an analyst about this, you go plus, 10 points each. So great, I score 30 points. And then you divide that by orientation. So how self-orientated am I? So am I really caring about the thing, or is this all about me? When it's all about me, let's say I score 10, right? So 30 divided by 10 gives me a score of 3. That means I'm probably quite low from a trustworthiness perspective. If I'm more orientated towards you, you're going to score me a 3 or 4. I mean, a 1's almost impossible, right? Because even in relationships, we're generally not going to score somebody a 1. Because you would have to be perfect, and we know that people aren't perfect.
So in your world, 1 is the best.
In my world, 1 is the best. 1 is a self-orient. If you're 1, it means you're completely orientated to the other person.
Okay.
So everything I'm doing is about Namita.
Okay.
Right, but we know that that's not possible because I'm part of this process, right? So I can't extract myself completely.
Yeah.
There'll always be a level of orientation on my side, but it's about how do we steer the orientation towards you rather than towards me. So this is not about me showing my brilliance. It's about how do I lift your brilliance up, and that way you get a lower score. If I'm making it all about me, so when I'm selling to you, if I'm talking to you about, I don't know, the cycling shoes you want or the next piece of technology you want, we're talking about how it impacts your world and really thinking about the difference it makes to you. If I'm telling you all about how this technology changes the world, how we're the best, we can make it do this for you and we can make it do, that's orientated towards me. So that would give me a high score. And that would make me less trustworthy than somebody
versus how technology can help you grow like this, how can change the way you do this.
Yeah. So you're saying
increase your profitability, reduce your expenses. I'm turning it.
Yeah. So I'm actually saying to you, well, because you're saying we're making mistakes in our data collections, and I'm saying to you, well, this technology could actually help you automatically pull that data from this place to enable you to make more informed decisions. So then some of those more informed decisions, you will get a better return on investment rate.
Yeah.
That's right. So I've orientated that towards you rather than saying, well, our data is proven to be the best because we're cheaper than this company over here. And so it's the orientation matters. So does the credibility. So I need to know my product. I need to be reliable. If I just don't turn up or if I'm late all the time, then that blocks trustworthiness as well. Yeah. So there is a way to determine trust, and you can be thinking about that with people on the ground. Is do I actually trust you? And that's the other thing. It's about often people in business, they don't trust someone, but they don't tell anybody they trust somebody. So that's when the micromanagement pops in, and you then start doing all of the work yourself rather than delegating, and that person stops learning. All because we didn't have an open conversation that said, I'm not really feeling that you're understanding the role or that you're reliable or that you care.
What do you do if you keep giving chances to someone and they keep failing you? How many chances should you give?
It depends on the conversations we've had. I think people
because you value the person, in general, you trust the person, you invest in the training, but still there are mistakes.
So I don't think it's about the number of chances you give. I think human beings will generally, we will generally walk away ourselves when we realize the end of the line is near.
I agree.
And the point is actually not about this is your third choice, this is your third telling off.
I get it.
Well, actually, it's about the conversation we have. So instead of having you've made a mistake again, then I go into defense mode. It's saying, okay, what's happening here? What's happening in your situation here? Because I've noticed this happen a couple of times now, and we need to fix it.
It's the way you approach the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always about the way you approach. If you approach any relationship in a way, and this happens in relationships, we do all the time, where we fight each other because neither of us wants to change our opinion. When actually, if we just said, let's be open to a difference of opinion, and actually then work it out. And it's, if you say to me, well, I don't understand why this has happened again. Can you just help me understand? And we can work together to find a solution.
That means you're trying to help the person still to figure it out.
Yes, absolutely. We're more likely to find a resolution, and that person's more likely then to actually
fix the problem.
Fix it in one way or another. Right, so they will either fix it and they will bring themselves to work, or they will fix it by finding another job. Right? You generally don't have to fire people
Yeah.
unless it's gross misconduct.
Yeah.
Because if you're having good conversations, and this is one of the things that we were trying to do in the big transformation that I was involved in, was changing conversations, changing the perspective of a conversation from you must do this to what you're working on. How can we help each other? What's some of the things that you need us to provide for you to do an even better job? So then you're orientating the conversation, orientating the situation back to the person, so they can start thinking about the way they approach, turn up, apply, whatever the words we want to use are, to the job that they're doing for you. And I think if we always appreciate that somebody on the floor has got a life behind them. If you think about, what you left at home this morning, it might be an argument, it might be a happy hug, it might be.
You don't know what that person's personal challenges are.
Exactly, you have no idea. So why would we start the conversation with putting them further into a potential hole that they're already in? So
like you rightly said, we forget to be human.
And this is the thing. We need to bring all of this. We need to stop talking about balance sheets, stop talking about, and bring it back to humanity.
Yeah.
And one of the things, as part of a big cultural transformation thing we did, and one of the places it did work, basically 250 people I work with, in terms of helping them redesign their work environment, and we rebuilt the values for that particular office, and in the end there were 7 values. 250 people couldn't build any more than
7 values.
10 values in total.
Okay.
4 of them crossed over with another 6. 3 of them crossed over with another 7 that were in there. It's like, so we all want the same thing.
Yeah.
And this is where it comes down to values, then strengths, then we make connections to roles. Yeah. We bring it back to that level. If we take out the complexity of what is a marketing company, what is a restaurant, what is a finance company, what is a podcast hub. It's kind of like
it all comes down to your values, a business values,
unless you
personal values,
But unless
and that's what, if you define your life, your business, your personal life, with having values as your North Star or your like a key, and then all decisions will be in line to your progress, to your growth, to your happiness.
Exactly. I think as a business, as a startup, your personal values are going to be very similar to your organizational values. Mm-hmm. There will be, I think, a decoupling over time, as your business grows and grows and grows and becomes, maybe it gets bought and listed at some point in the future. So I think there will be a decoupling, and values are okay to change from an organization's perspective. Human beings will find it very hard to change their values. And that's the interesting part, is when you hire on values, then you're likely not going to have the same people in the end as you had at the beginning, because people will they will diverse. They will all move away from the centerpiece, and that's okay.
Because you will find the right people who are aligned to your values to help you grow.
And that's the thing. And if companies want to chase money, if companies want to chase sales, get people who love chasing sales. Yeah. Don't buy people who like relationships.
Get people who love numbers and want to meet their targets and goals. Yeah,
absolutely. Get them people who value those things.
And if you want to have better trainers and coaches, then get people who are into value relationships and people and humans. Amazing. That was a very interesting conversation. I want to go longer. I want to discuss so many more other things. Maybe, Nick, we need to have you back.
Yeah.
We need to talk about so many other things, like your Everesting challenge. Why did you decide to do Everesting? How did you, it's a huge challenge. Triple Everesting, not once. It's 21 times going up and down.
Yeah, 21 times up and down.
Double J's.
Yeah. Everesting was an accident initially. I was just helping a couple of friends do this thing called Everesting, and I ended up Everesting. And one thing led to another, and I did an Everesting in December 2022, I think it was, with a friend called Alessandro, who rides for Boone, a really good cyclist.
Yeah.
And I said to him afterwards, let's do a triple Everest. And he's like, no, let's do a double. And I was like, no, because a double is, if you do a triple, then you get the double anyway.
Yeah.
So why would you do a double and you have to go back and do another triple? It's like, it's great, it's stupid. But anyway, I just like challenge. I like to see how far we can go. And I kicked the can down the road for the best part of a year, with not really enough kind of motivation behind me to do it. And then I joined Waste to Wonder, and we're trying to build a sustainability cookery school in the Gambia. So we needed to raise awareness that we could raise investment for to fund the building or to buy the land and fund the building. And that was the spark I needed to then go out, train, and actually do or attempt the triple Everesting, which it took three days and 56 hours of riding, 72 hours of actual total time, only 3 hours sleep. So yeah, it was.
That's some intense training of the body and the mind.
Yeah, so I did 56,000 meters of climbing in 8 weeks.
Wow.
So, and then did the 27,000 meters. And kind of just to kind of push this on a bit is I had no credentials for finishing a triple Everest. And this is what one of the messages that I want to leave with for people is, just because you haven't done something doesn't mean you're not going to be able to do it. And in all of my training, I failed a couple of times to achieve the goal that I had set out for the training session. And one of those was to climb 12,000 meters, which is not even half the triple Everest.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do it. I got to 10,000 meters and failed. And I was kind of like, oh God, this is not good. This is 3 weeks before. But I then tried to remember why I was doing it, and then surrounded myself with people who would help me achieve it. And this is where, it comes down to human beings connecting with one another for a greater purpose.
Is the why.
Absolutely.
That made you complete it.
It was the spark I needed to get to finish the job. Yeah. But again, it comes down the why was important, the people were even more important. And that's the thing. The people inspired me to keep going because they were breaking barriers that they never thought they could break either.
It was an interesting 3 days. We were there with you, and there was the spirit of just going up and down. And I'm going up. I attempted twice, which otherwise I would struggle even once going up the mountain. And I did it 2.5 times, I think, and it was just in the air. Yeah. Motivation in the air. That's again a message that surround yourself with the people who are motivated, who are having similar values to your values, and connected.
And that's why it comes down to it. If you hire on values and you hire on strengths, connect those people together, they will do amazing things.
There's no way your business will not grow.
Indescribable things. Yeah, amazing.
On that note,
thank you very much.
It was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you guys enjoyed the conversations as much as we did. But Nick, if anybody, a business person or a sports athlete wants to work with you, how can they find details on how to work with you? How can you help?
I can give you my email address and my mobile number.
We will mention it in the show notes below. The link to your website, maybe?
I don't have one.
Okay. So maybe details to Nick's email address.
Yeah. And my profiles.
Yes, on your LinkedIn profile and your social media profiles.
Yes,
we will definitely link them in the details below. And you also help business owners as well as sports athletes.
Yes.
Awesome. And there you go. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. It all comes down to values, strengths, and why you're doing what you're doing. Until the next episode.